Hello, this is D, and I'm back with another video, and today we have a huge leak. Now, the Switch 2 specifications have been data mined, and we have some specifications. Now, the Switch is rumored to launch in, I believe, April sometime, and I believe that this week we're supposed to get an announcement. I think it's either tomorrow or the day after that we're supposed to actually get the full specifications of the Switch 2. Now, this event is going to be solely focused on the Switch 2 and no software titles. Now, I find that a little bit hard to believe because you're going to want to reveal your Switch 2 consoles with some games. You're not just going to reveal the hardware. So I would take that with a grain of salt. I think that when they do reveal the Switch 2, that we will see at least a few games running on the system so that we can have an idea of what to expect with the graphics of the Switch 2. Now, with the specs that have been data mined, I think we're going to have a pretty good idea of what we can expect on the Switch 2. Now, let's get right into the specs. Now, the CPU is running an ARM Cortex A78C. Now, to my knowledge, this is about a 4-year-old ARM processor. It is scalable, so I don't know what kind of optimizations they've made to it. It has 8 cores. The cache sizes are unknown. Now, the GPU is an NVIDIA T39 Ampere RTX 20 series GPU. Now, when I'm looking at the specifications, as you can see, 1534 CUDA cores, it's a little bit under an RTX 2050. So I would say it's kind of in the RTX 2050 category. But as we look further into the specifications, we see that it has Gen 3 Tensor cores in it. It has 48 of them. Now, this is really going to be beneficial when it comes to DLSS. Now, that's the one thing about this console that a lot of people are forgetting, that it is going to have DLSS. And when it comes to machine learning AI upscaling, I have to be honest here, DLSS is definitely the best one. It's been out the longest, and they've had lots of iterations of DLSS. Now, I'm going to assume that they would have worked with Nintendo hand in hand to kind of customize the DLSS for that console. Now, I'll get into that a little bit later on. Let's just get into the rest of the specifications. So you get 6 texture processing clusters, TPCs. You got 12 streaming multi-processors, SMs. You got 1 graphic processor cluster. You got 2 RTX ray tracing cores. Now, I don't know how good the ray tracing is going to be on the Switch 2. I don't know what we should expect with 2 ray tracing cores, but at the same time, I think they're going to be targeting a lower resolution and using DLSS to upscale it. I don't think we're going to be targeting the same fidelity as some of these other games, but who knows? They could be using DLSS from 540p, upscaling it to 1080p, and they could be using a higher resolution when they're doing the dock mode. So we'll get into that. Now, it's got 12 gigabytes of RAM, and it's on 2 6GB chips. Now, 12 gigabytes. Now, there's been a big debate online. I don't want to get into all of this stuff, but we know the Series S, a lot of people do not like that it has 8 gigabytes of RAM on it. And I say specifically developers. There's been a lot of developers that have had issues getting their games running with the 8 gigabytes that's available. Now, of course, a lot of them, they just got it working, but it was a pretty big task for many studios. And I'm talking big studios. I'm not just talking little indie games or smaller studios. It is an issue that they have to work around. And in 2025, 8 gigabytes is just not enough. Now, here we have 12 gigabytes. Now, I'm not sure how much is allocated to the system, so let's just assume like 2 or 1 is allocated to the system. You still have about 10 gigabytes available for games, and once again, we're running these games at a lower resolution on the Switch 2. Now, when we look at the profiles, the handheld mode, it's running at 1100.8 megahertz, and when I look at those clocks, I gotta be honest with you guys, I don't think those clocks are correct. Now, this was data mined, so that information was there, but there's no way that the CPUs are gonna be running at that speed. So I would just disregard the clock speeds on the CPU. Now, the GPU is running at 561 megahertz, which gives you 1.72 T-flops of performance, and this is all when it's in the handheld mode. Now, the RAM runs at 2133 megahertz. It has 68.26 GBs of peak bandwidth. Now, when you dock the system, this is when we see a pretty big increase in performance. Now the CPU, once again, ignore it because it would make no sense why you would lower the CPU, like maybe for the temperatures because everything else is running hotter, but at the same time, it doesn't make sense for some of the game engines. I can see it kind of encountering some issues. So once again, I'm just going to be honest with you guys here. I'm not sure what's going on here with the CPU speeds. I guess when they announce it later on this week, we'll have a better idea of what's happening here, but I would just disregard the CPU numbers. Now the GPU is running at 1007 megahertz, and this gives you 3.09 teraflops of performance on the Switch 2 when it's in the dock mode. Now the RAM is also at a higher speed. It's running 3200 megahertz, and it gives you 102.4 gigabytes of peak bandwidth. Now overall for this handheld, I gotta say it's pretty good. I think it puts it a little bit above the Steam Deck. I could be wrong. It's around Steam Deck territory. We're gonna have to crunch the numbers. I'm looking at this in real time, so I don't really have time to look at all the numbers and compare the different handhelds that we have. I'm just making an estimation. Of course, when the specs are fully released, we'll have a better idea of what to expect on the console. So what I'm seeing here though, this puts it around Steam Deck territory. It also puts it pretty close to the Series S. Now it has more RAM than the Series S, so it's not going to have the same issues as the Series S. And we see that the Series S, it does run all of the next generation games. Now, it runs it with a lot of cutbacks, and sometimes a few games have been delayed, but for the most part, it's running the games. Now, whether or not you like 30 FPS or not is a different situation, but it is running the game. So I would assume, looking at these specifications, that the Switch 2 is going to have no problem running modern games. And I kind of always wondered because Microsoft said that the next Switch would run Call of Duty. And when I kind of seen some of the leaks, I was kind of questioning that. But when I see these specifications right now, I can see it running on that system. And once again, this has DLSS in it. And once again, it's using Gen 3 tensor cores from Ampere. Now, if you've been paying attention, DLSS 4 is coming out, and DLSS 4, it does run on the 2000 series. So let's see what DLSS 4 features actually run on the 2000 series. I'm just gonna pull it up here on my screen, DLSS 4. Now, as you can see on the chart here, these are the improvements that are coming to the Ampere series from DLSS 4. Now we're just gonna focus here on the 20 series. Now it's gonna get DLSS ray reconstruction. It's gonna get the new DLSS super resolution. So this is the Transformers model. It's gonna get better deep learning anti-aliasing. Now this is all available for the RTX 20 series. So in theory, the Switch 2 can run DLSS 4 features. It is going to have DLSS. It has 48 Gen 3 tensor cores. So if I had to guess here, I'm going to say that they're going to probably upscale from 540p and maybe have an option to go up to 720p, or have an option from 540p to scale up to 1080p. Now, the reason why I say this is because we have seen some leaked documents of DLSS working on the Switch. There's some type of patent that was going out. Now, I did see this. I just can't remember all of the details, but I do believe it started from 540p and it went all the way up to like 4K. Now, I wouldn't be expecting 4K on this system, but it would be amazing if they were able to achieve that with DLSS on the Switch 2. But in reality, I think they're going to use it from 540p up to 720p up to 1080p in the handheld mode. Now, when it's in the docked mode, perhaps we're going to get up to 1440p. I would assume that you'd be able to do, I don't know, 720p up to 1440p. Maybe you'll have the option to even do it from 540p and turn up some of the settings. I'm not quite sure what they're going to do here, but I will say that for a handheld, it's not that bad. And in dock mode, it's not that bad as well. It's a huge improvement over the original Switch. And we can make fun of the lack of power and lack of innovation here because it's, barely matching a Series S. But it is a handheld at the end of the day. And if it can run well with DLSS, if it can run ray tracing, if it can run these modern games that are on the console right now, I think that is a huge win for the Switch 2. I think the number one problem, for me at least, with the Switch was that it didn't run all of the games. There was no Call of Duty on it. You know, there's no WWE 2K games on it. It misses a lot of games because of the specifications. It just wasn't good enough to play modern games. Now, looking at the Switch 2 specs here, I think it's going to be fine running modern games. Anyways, I want to know what you guys think about all of this, so let me know in the comment section down below. We don't have much longer to wait. This week, we're going to get all the information on the specifications of the Switch 2. I'm excited. Of course, I'm going to come back and we'll do a follow-up video and we'll go through the specs at that time. So like I usually say, like, share, subscribe to the channel. I'll see you guys on the next one.